Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something remarkable. A week is enough time to start becoming a version of yourself that people won't even recognize. Now, I'm not saying you can transform everything in 7 days. Life doesn't work like that. But 7 days is enough to shock your own system, enough to break patterns, enough to ignite a spark that changes the course of your life. And it all begins with a decision to rise, to focus, to discipline your mind and your habits until the old version of you simply can't survive anymore. Radical change begins the moment you make a clear, unwavering decision about the person you are going to become. Most people never transform because they never truly decide. They think about change, they wish for change, they talk about change, but they never cross that invisible line where they say enough. This version of me cannot continue. Jim Rohn used to say that your life changes the day you get disgusted in a good way. When you get tired of your own excuses, your own patterns, your own limitations, something powerful awakens inside you. And that spark is the beginning of becoming unrecognizable. A single decision has the power to interrupt old habits and force you to build new ones. It has the power to shake you out of comfort and push you into growth. But it must be a real decision, not a wish. A decision backed by intention, commitment, and the willingness to let go of the old identity that has kept you stuck. This kind of decision is not emotional hype. It is a quiet, firm moment when you say to yourself, the next 7 days will not look like the last 7 years. It's a moment where you stop negotiating with the behaviors that keep you average, where you stop tolerating the patterns that drain your energy, where you stop accepting the identity of someone who can't change, won't change, or is too tired to change. When the decision is clear, your mind stops searching for excuses and starts searching for strategies. You stop asking, can I? And start asking, how can I? You stop waiting for motivation and start creating momentum. That shift is everything. It's the beginning of becoming someone your old self would not even recognize. A true decision changes your standards instantly. Standards are not dreams, they are the rules you live by. When you decide to transform, your standards rise without permission. You no longer wake up late because the new you demands an early start. You no longer waste time scrolling because the new you values focus. You no longer tolerate negativity because the new you needs clarity. You no longer feed old habits because the new you is hungry for growth. This is what happens when a decision becomes a declaration. You draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am now. And even though the change is new, your mind begins aligning with the new identity immediately. The next 7 days become a proving ground, not to anyone else, but to yourself. When the decision is strong, your energy changes. You stand differently, think differently, speak differently. You feel a sense of urgency in your actions because deep down, you're stepping into a new version of yourself. You feel a sense of focus because the decision has simplified your life suddenly. The noise doesn't matter. You feel a sense of responsibility because you know this transformation is in your hands. You stop waiting for conditions to improve because you realize that you are the condition that must improve. This is why a clear decision is the foundation of becoming unrecognizable. For 7 days, you live with intention. You act with purpose. You show up with discipline. You move like someone who has something to prove, not to the world, but to the future version of yourself, who's waiting to meet you a single week. Of disciplined action has the power to rewrite your identity because discipline is the fastest way to break the patterns that kept you ordinary. Most people think it takes months or years to change who they are, but identity shifts the moment your behavior shifts. Jim Rohn taught that discipline is the foundation of all success. And when you apply discipline consistently, even for 7 days, you send a strong message to your mind. We are no longer operating at the old level. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about intention, consistency, and the willingness to do what the old version of you refused to do. When you wake up earlier, push harder, learn more, and stay focused, your brain begins to form a new understanding of who you are. It says, this is someone who follows through. This is someone who keeps promises. This is someone who can change. That new belief becomes the seed of a new identity. For 7 days, discipline becomes the proof that you are serious about transformation. When you force yourself to stick to a routine, whether it's exercising, reading, planning, or work, with full intensity, you disrupt the old pathways of laziness, procrastination, and inconsistency. You interrupt the comfort zone that kept you limited. Every disciplined action is like carving a new mental highway, and the more consistent you are, the faster that highway becomes your new automatic way of living. That is why one disciplined week can do more for your growth than months of thinking about change. Discipline is action. Action is momentum. Momentum is identity. And identity determines how far you will go. In 7 days of discipline, your energy changes, your mind sharpens, your confidence rises. You start feeling different because you are behaving different. And when your behavior shifts, your identity starts catching up quickly. The old version of you, the one who made excuses, delayed goals, avoided discomfort, begins losing power. The disciplined version of you starts taking control. Each day you stay consistent. You reinforce the belief that you are capable, reliable, and stronger than your excuses. That belief is priceless, because once you believe you can change, you will change. Once you see yourself as disciplined, you begin acting like someone who achieves great things. Discipline also strengthens your emotional and mental resilience. When you tell yourself, for 7 days, I will not quit, you train your mind to endure discomfort without breaking. You learn how to push through resistance, and this newfound strength spreads into every area of life. You stop avoiding difficult tasks. You stop running from challenges. You stop letting moods dictate your productivity. You begin operating from commitment instead of convenience. And that shift alone is enough to make you unrecognizable. Discipline teaches you to lead your life instead of reacting to it. It teaches you that progress is a choice, not an accident. It teaches you that the future belongs to those who control their habits, not those who are controlled by them. The beauty of a disciplined week is that it creates a psychological turning point. When you look back and realize you stayed consistent for 7 full days, something powerful happens. You no longer see discipline as impossible. You see it as your new standard. You realize that if you can do it for a week, you can do it again and again and again. Soon, the disciplined version of you becomes normal, and the old version becomes a distant memory. This is how 7 days of discipline can start rewriting your identity. Not because the week itself is magical, but because the discipline you practice during that week reveals the person you are capable of becoming. 7 days of eliminating distraction and reclaiming your focus can create a level of clarity that most people never experience, simply because they never disconnect from the noise long enough to hear their own thoughts. Distraction is the silent enemy of transformation. It steals your time, drains your mental energy, and scatters your attention until you're busy all day yet unproductive. Jim Rohn often said that success is a matter of keeping the main thing the main thing. And for one powerful week, you must do exactly that. When you remove unnecessary noise, social media, scrolling, pointless conversations, negative influences, and low-value habits, you free up your mind to operate at a higher level. You allow your brain to think deeply instead of constantly switching between meaningless inputs. Focus becomes your superpower because the mind thrives when it is directed, not when it is distracted. For 7 days, you must create an environment where your attention is protected like a valuable asset. Turn off notifications that pull you in 100 directions. Replace mindless entertainment with purposeful learning. Limit your time around people who drain you and increase your time around ideas that lift you. When your world becomes quieter, your mind becomes sharper. You begin noticing what you've been ignoring, your goals, your potential, your possibilities. You start seeing where your time was being wasted and how much more capable you truly are when you remove the clutter. 1 week of pure focus can reveal that your problem was never lack of potential. It was lack of attention. As you reclaim your focus, your productivity multiplies. Tasks that once took hours can be completed in minutes because your mind is no longer scattered. You move with intention instead of impulsiveness. You think before reacting. You act instead of hesitating. The old you lived in a mental fog created by constant distractions, but the new you operates with clarity. This clarity helps you make better decisions, because your thoughts are no longer competing with a dozen sources of noise. You become more strategic with your time, more selective with your energy, and more serious about your future. This is the space where growth accelerates. because focus is the gateway to mastery. In these 7 days, your emotional state begins to change as well. Distractions often hide discomfort, and when you remove them, you face yourself honestly. You confront the habits you've avoided, the goals you've postponed, and the dreams you've ignored. This honesty is not always comfortable, but it's necessary. Because once you become aware, you can no longer pretend. You start taking responsibility for your time and your choices. You stop blaming conditions and start shaping them. With every day of focused living, your self-respect rises because you know you are directing your life instead of drifting through it. This new level of awareness is what makes you unrecognizable, because people can see the shift in your presence, your clarity, and your determination. The moment you reclaim your focus, you change the pace of your life. You begin operating like someone with a mission. You speak differently because your mind is organized. You walk differently because you have direction. You wake up differently because you know exactly what matters. In 1 week of protecting your focus, you can experience more progress than in months of distraction. You begin realizing how much power you were giving away to things that did nothing for your future. And once you taste this level of clarity, you won't want to go back, because the focused version of you is stronger, smarter, more capable, and far more aligned with the future you are trying to build. Upgrading your environment for 1 week can accelerate your transformation faster than most people realize, because your surroundings shape your behavior, your energy, and ultimately your identity. Jim Rohn often reminded us that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but it goes even deeper than that. Your environment includes the conversations you hear, the places you spend your time, the habits that are normal around you, the standards people hold, and even the energy in the room. When you step into an environment of laziness, negativity, and low expectations, it silently pulls you down. It convinces you to settle, to slow down, to shrink. But when you enter an environment of discipline, ambition, and growth, it elevates you without asking for permission. For 7 days, changing your environment becomes one of the most powerful ways to become unrecognizable. Because the moment you shift what surrounds you, you shift what influences you. For 1 week, surround yourself with high-energy growth inputs. Read books that expand your thinking. Listen to voices that challenge you to rise. Watch content that educates you instead of numbing you. Engage with people who talk about ideas, not gossip. Spend time in environments that inspire action, whether it's a clean workspace, a motivated gym atmosphere, a quiet study corner, or a place where creativity flows. When your surroundings align with your goals, it becomes much easier to stay disciplined. You remove friction. You remove temptation. You remove noise. And when the path becomes smooth, your progress accelerates. This is why a simple shift in environment can produce results that feel dramatic. You're simply removing the invisible anchors that held you back. Your physical environment plays a massive role as well. A cluttered room creates a cluttered mind. A messy desk creates scattered thinking. A disorganized day creates an unproductive life. But when you take time, just 7 days, to clean your space, organize your tools, declutter distractions, and design a system that supports your goals, you send a message to your brain that your life is entering a new phase. You create a space where focus comes naturally, not forcefully. You create a setting where productivity feels effortless rather than stressful. Your environment becomes a silent partner in your growth instead of a barrier you have to fight through every day. During these 7 days, your social environment must also evolve. Limit time with people who drain your energy, discourage your dreams, or feed your doubts. You don't have to cut them off forever, but you do need distance while you build momentum. At the same time, increase your exposure to winners, people who think big, act with purpose, and hold themselves to high standards. You don't even need to know them personally. You can soak in their mindset through books, videos, podcasts, and lectures. When you immerse yourself in a world where success, discipline, and growth are normal, your brain adjusts to that standard as well. You rise to the level of the environment you consistently consume. Your emotional environment matters just as much. Protect your peace. Guard your energy. Remove negativity, not just from others, but from yourself. Replace complaining with problem solving. Replace doubt with learning. Replace fear with small actions. When you intentionally shape the emotional climate around you, you begin walking differently thinking differently and acting differently. People notice the shift before you do, because the environment you choose begins reflecting through your behavior. Upgrading your environment for one disciplined week can make you unrecognizable, not because the week itself is magical, but because you finally place yourself in a space where growth is. Not only possible, it becomes natural. Replacing old habits with high-value actions for 7 days can completely shift the direction of your life, because habits are the roots of identity. Everything you are today, your confidence, your results, your energy, your opportunities, is a reflection of the habits you've repeated over time. Jim Rohn used to say that failure is nothing more than a few errors in judgment repeated every day, while success is a few simple disciplines practiced every day. When you commit to replacing low-value habits with intentional actions, you're not just changing routines, you're changing destiny. For 1 week, your mission is to interrupt the habits that kept you stuck and replace them with behaviors that pull you toward the future you want. This is how you become unrecognizable, by refusing to act like the old you and deliberately choosing patterns that support growth ... with awareness. Identify the habits that drain your potential: sleeping too late, scrolling endlessly, eating with intention, consuming negativity, procrastinating, delaying decisions, or avoiding responsibility. These habits don't just waste time, they shape you into someone who doubts their own capability. For 7 days, you challenge each of these habits with high-value actions that build a stronger version of you. Wake up earlier to create quiet space for your goals. Read something that stretches your thinking instead of consuming noise. Exercise to build both physical and mental strength. Work on your goals with intention instead of waiting for the right mood. These are not random actions, they are identity upgrades. Every time you choose a high-value habit over an old one, you are voting for the person you want to become. In this week of transformation, consistency is more important than intensity. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to create a rhythm of winning choices that compound. High-value actions have a domino effect. When you read for 20 minutes in the morning, your mind becomes sharper. When your mind sharpens, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, your productivity increases. When productivity increases, your self-respect grows. And when self-respect grows, you naturally continue choosing habits that align with your higher standard. Transformation is not a grand event. It's a chain reaction triggered by one strong week of consistent action. The old habits begin to weaken because you're feeding your mind and body new patterns that elevate you. Replacing old habits also shifts your emotional state. Low-value habits often come from stress, boredom, fear, or uncertainty. But when you replace them with high-value actions, your emotional baseline rises. You feel more in control. You feel more capable. You feel more aligned with your potential. Your confidence grows because you're proving to yourself that you can lead your life instead of reacting to it. Each high-value habit becomes a statement of self-respect, a quiet declaration that your future matters. Even small wins begin reshaping your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries to improve. You see yourself as someone who acts like the person they want to become. By the end of 7 days, the contrast becomes visible. Your energy changes, your attitude shifts, your discipline strengthens. The people around you begin to notice something different, even if they can't explain it. But the real change is internal. You start feeling that the old you is fading, replaced by a version who chooses purpose over comfort, intention over impulse, and growth over routine. This is how replacing old habits with high-value actions makes you unrecognizable in 1 week, because habits are the architects of identity. And when you rebuild the architecture, the entire structure of your life begins to rise. The 6th key lesson is understanding that success is not a single event, but a consistent accumulation of disciplined choices, intentional habits, and a clear sense of direction. Many people wait for the big moment that will change everything for them. But Jim Rohn teaches that real transformation happens in the quiet hours when no one is watching, when you choose discipline over comfort, growth over excuses, and purpose over distraction. This keynote reminds us that every day is shaping our future, and whether that future becomes extraordinary or ordinary depends on these small decisions that compound over time. It's not the dramatic actions that build a successful life, but the repetitive ones. Reading a few pages, saving a small amount, practicing a skill for a few minutes, exercising daily, reviewing goals, reflecting on mistakes, and making small but meaningful adjustments. These actions, though tiny in the moment, eventually become the architecture of your destiny. Jim Rohn emphasized that your daily routines reveal your commitment long before results show up. You don't become successful suddenly. You become successful gradually, and then one day others notice. But by then, the foundation has already been built through silent effort. And this is where most people struggle. They want the result without the routine, the reward without the responsibility, the success without the sacrifice. But nothing meaningful is achieved without giving up something less meaningful. You trade hours of distraction for hours of direction, and in that trade, you build a version of yourself capable of handling the success. You desire another part of this concept is accountability. You are the author of your own life, and every choice either strengthens your story or weakens it. Jim Rohn often said, you cannot hire someone else to do your push-ups. This means no one can take responsibility for your growth, your financial habits, your health, your skill development, or your emotional maturity. Delegation works in business, but not in personal growth. If you want a better life, you must become a better you, and that requires daily effort. Accountability is not punishment, it is empowerment. It gives you control. And with control, you can reshape any part of your life starting from where you are right now. Rohn also teaches that success demands patience because the seeds you plant today will not bear fruit tomorrow. Many people quit because they don't see immediate results, but nature teaches us that growth is invisible before it becomes visible. A bamboo tree spends years growing roots underground before it shoots upward. The same is true for your business, your mindset, your fitness, your income, your character. If you stay consistent long enough, progress becomes inevitable. But if you give up too early, you never get to see what all that effort could have become. Through this keynote, Rohn encourages you to embrace the long game, to fall in love with the process rather than obsess over timing, and to trust that disciplined effort always pays off, even if the payoff arrives later than expected.